They're talking about living forever. And like we're actually at a point in human history where it seems like there is a push of like, not only am I going to live better, but like we're going to start pushing some records of how long do these humans stay on the planet.
It is, and I almost wish this happened 10 years sooner, because then I would be like doing it more for the, say, chasing, I want to see how long I can live, versus at this juncture, I'm still thinking I got to reverse the last 10 years of damage. Because from, let's say, 40 to 50, I was still pushing my body harder than I should have, just doing dumb things, marathon ocean swims, running the New York Marathon, like lifting heavy, like all the stuff I should have been like, listen, like stop doing that.
We are back with another episode today, and before we get started, I want to give a little shout out to Joe. So we've been talking for a few months, and in one of our first conversations, it was mostly about content, AI, where the world's at, Joe's business, but he took a second to check in and say, where's my health at? And there was a moment where I was like, I could fib to this guy and probably tell him the answer he wants to hear. But I remember thinking to myself, like, I just kind of started this health journey from a mastermind. I've always heard the quote, people come into your life to show you where you're not yet free. And this was kind of a moment where I saw, okay, yes, business is important, but if I don't have the health element, like transparently, I've said it behind closed doors, like I see no benefit in being a rich fat guy. Like if I'm not going to enjoy the fruits of my labor to where I can still play with the dog, exercise, go on the hikes I want on a mountain, then there's no point of it. And then two, I think it's been very cool to see you take what I would call a training approach to content and AI and making it a regimen for you, because I think if you make it trackable and you relate it to something you're already good at, you have a much higher chance of success. And I am happy to have you on the show.
Well, thanks. No, I appreciate it. And it's funny because it does go both ways, you know, and when, since we are kind of in the health business, you know, it always is really important for me just on a humanitarian level. Like when I meet someone, even such as yourself, especially somebody that, you know, you're passionate about biohacking, learning new techniques, you're young, you're hip on all this technology. So like, even though I'm helping you with some things with your health protocol, your training, supplements, you know, you're also helping me. I mean, I'm essentially the fat slob on the couch as it relates to digital technology. Like, I mean, like literally like.
But you've been on the treadmill.
But I've been on the treadmill. I've been punching the clock, and you kind of got me up moving, you know. So the pounds are coming off.
And you're feeling it a little bit.
Metaphorically speaking, and now the workouts are getting a little bit easier. The digital workouts, that is, you know.
So I want to get people to understand not only your health background, but one of the very first conversations we had, you made a joke about AI and you're like, so what? The days of writing copy are just kind of over and the robots can do this. So for people who don't know, what were your first roles in the fitness industry?
Gosh, I mean, probably going way back into like the 90s, like when I was in my late teens, was in personal training. You know, okay. I mean, I kind of started out as a personal trainer because that's really the most hands-on way.
Like one-to-one training?
One-to-one training. Literally like meeting somebody, man or woman of any age, assessing their lifestyle, assessing their physical complications, then being like, all right, you know, what can I do to help you? And even though my knowledge, let's say 30, 40 years ago was what it was then, it was still advanced and it was still helpful enough to be able to help somebody get on the right track. And so that was where kind of that all originally started. But then let's say 10 years later in the professional world, I mean, I essentially was a copywriter. So I did a lot of copywriting, both technical copy, ad copy, marketing copy when people still read muscle magazines. That was like the big thing. Now, like there's no more magazines. Like when I was in school, it was like literally you had a stack of muscle magazines and that was the Bible. So you're reading that. And so because I read so many of those magazines in my teen years and in my early 20s, by the time I got to be 30, I was the master at writing this magazine copy for a lot of these products.
So was that a weird shift for you to go from like, I'm making my money changing people's physical to then I'm now getting value seen by writing? Like, was that a weird shift for you to adapt to? Because we've talked about in the Midwest, a lot of people, they have to work hard one-to-one, whereas copy is kind of one-to-many.
Yes, it was what really was the wake-up call for me with that, and what was kind of like almost like, whoa, what's going on, was because when you're personal training, you know, you're at a limited amount, particularly in the Midwest, you know, it was maybe $40 or $50 an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not in Miami South Beach where you're charging $500 a session, you know, so to make, let's say $400 a day, you know, you got to have a lot of clients booked, right? And then at the time when I switched to copywriting, you know, I'm getting, you know, $2,500 or $5,000 to write an ad, and I'm knocking out a couple ads a week. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is like too easy. Like what am I doing here? You know what I mean? So then I kind of shifted to that, and still would always help people because I just enjoy working with people one
Yeah.
on one. But that was when this is probably maybe in like around 2003, 2004. Shit, was that 20, 30 years ago, 20 years ago?
Yeah.
When
So at this time, like for people who don't understand, because a lot of my audience, like they either grew up with the internet or at least when they started in business, it existed. What was the way for you to even like get connected to people, right? Like how were you finding jobs? How were you finding connections? What was networking like?
Man, back then it was literally just word of mouth. You had to know somebody that knew somebody. And there were a few key people in the early part of my career that had I not met them, and really these were people that I helped.
Yeah.
And that's why I've always had, a passion for helping others because when I would help people and change their lives with their training, their nutrition, their supplementation, they would always be like, man, Joe, like, you help me so much, or, you're so, good with this. I got to connect you with so and so because he might be able to help further your career. So it's kind of one of those pay it forward type things. Like the more I did helping people, the more people kind of connected me with those that were, higher up the food chain at the time.
So who was the first mentor that maybe kicked you in the ass a little bit where you didn't like them at first, but in hindsight, you appreciate what they did for you?
Man, I'd probably say, on the chemistry side, Patrick Arnold was one. I mean, he was the godfather of pro hormones.
Okay.
And this guy is just really black and white, very difficult to please, very difficult to communicate with. I mean, he's a total science guy. I mean, this is, we're talking probably one of the most brilliant minds in the history of performance nutrition. And he had a brand that the brand did not do as well as it could have because he was so scienced out with it, the average person didn't understand. I kind of understood it. So, like, I kind of got it. And so he really, in working with him, kind of gave me a lot of like hard discipline as it relates to science and product development. So some stuff that I thought might have been good ideas, if it wasn't validated, he would have an answer to shut it down, shut it down. But then when I got to a point where I was bringing stuff to him, be like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And he was like, oh, it's a great idea. Then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit. Well, I was able to impress this mad chemist.
So you knew he wasn't just angry, you knew he just had a higher quality standard.
Yeah, just totally like on like, genius level, like an Elon Musk, but as it relates to chemistry. I mean, the stuff that he even invented 20, 30 years ago, people don't even know how he even did it at the time.
Yeah, because like right now in the Midwest, things are still probably relatively behind in the country, but we're seeing these little mini markets pop up. Like places like Soul Space are now in town where people are
Yep.
paying to biohack. There's a lot of, I would say, more labs to test blood work than there even used to be. But at the time, I mean, what was the general consensus like when you would tell people like, oh, I'm into supplementation, efficiency of products, oh, checking your own hormones? Like, was it kind of crazy at the time?
No, I mean, it was almost non-existent. I mean, truthfully, the era that we're in right now, where people are like open to like, I got to get my blood work done. I need to know, all my biomarkers, all my panels. Like back then, if you told somebody to get blood work done, like they would look at you like you're crazy, So it wasn't even a thing. And people really weren't even concerned that much about health. They were really more concerned just about results and what they could take.
So your visual results, what you're talking about.
Visual results and performance results. So 30 years ago it was like whether you're talking a high level athlete saying what PEDs can I take or what can I take that could push the envelope to the point where I'm not going to test positive, like what's the strongest thing I could take legally
Yeah.
regardless of what the repercussions would be physiologically. I just want to be able to perform. Or for women, I'll take whatever I can to lose weight, whether it's ephedra, amphetamines, whatever.
They'll do it. Yeah.
They would do it. Where now people are saying, hey, you know what? I want to be careful with what I put in my body because I'm concerned about my health. So I really see that the last 5 to 10 years, everybody's becoming much more health conscious, particularly here in the Midwest, where, of course, as you know, caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol are food groups
Yeah.
when you're from
Part
Cleveland.
of the pyramid.
Cleveland, Detroit, and Pittsburgh,
So I think you've seen this, but in one of the documentaries about Mr. Olympia, I think it was back when it was Kai Green, Phil Heath. They asked all of the top eight, if you could take a pill right now to win Olympia this year, but you knew you would die in 5 years, would you take it? And across the board, everyone said yes. And you kind of see this moment where, I think a lot of people say it's steroid addiction at that level, but I think it also is a behavior addiction as well, right? Because do you see a lot of times, like on the dangerous side of supplementation, do you think it's more of a mental issue or do you think it's really the chemical or do you think it's a combo of both that hurts people?
I'll tell you, I really think it's somewhat a combo of both, but I think a lot of it is more mental and psychological because, like, I even know for myself, when you're in your early 20s, right? And that's like when guys out of high school, out of college, you're literally at the point like, you know what? If I'm a football player, I'm either going to make it to the NFL or I'm just going to be the guy like Al Bundy that scored 4 touchdowns in one game and be talking about my glory days for the rest of my life and, maybe be the big guy at the gym. So I think when you're at that phase in life, you really can't imagine being 40 or 50. You can't imagine dealing with health complications because you've never had it. You've always been healthy. You've always been fine. And so even like somebody that's thinking, okay, well, I want to win the Olympia now, you get so wrapped up in that world and let's say winning the Olympia or winning a particular bodybuilding show becomes the focus of your life. You literally don't think of anything else. And so it logically makes sense because I've met people that have made those decisions and it's a psychological thing when you're that wrapped up in it. But then once you get past a certain phase, let's say you're 40, 50 and you're past your prime, you're out of that phase of your career, you look back and are like, look at all these kids that are doing all this stuff for what,
Yeah, and I remember when we talked about it, my age group won't admit it out loud, but, I'll say it for the podcast tonight. SARMs were a huge epidemic when I was in college.
Yeah.
And I remember it was my freshman year. I think I watched a YouTube video where in the comment section, everyone's like, he's not on test, he's taking LGD. And I was like, what's this thing? So
you were taken.
No.
Oh, somebody else.
No, in the comment section of a YouTube video of a lifter we were watching, everyone's like,
Gotcha.
He's on LGD. And so me and my buddy are like lifting pretty heavy at the time. We're like, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
So we start researching it. And at the time, this is before ChatGPT. This is when Google is, let's say, in its heyday, but still like articles are not verifiable in any way.
Right.
So I started researching it and it tells me you don't have to inject it and it's oral, which sounded good. But then when I researched this, I'm like, it could actually be more liver toxic. And I think at the time there was a creator, he still is out there, More Plates, More Dates.
Okay.
And he does all these supplement breakdown videos that are like 2 hours long. And I found a video he had made on it. And one of the issues was this was a new chemical that had been experimented on in the late 90s. So we were quite literally in a human period where we don't know the long-term effects. But they said if there's anything that's going to happen, it's going to kill men's free testosterone. And so my buddy did not want to hear that I stayed up on a Saturday night watching that video. Orders it anyways, because there are all these Chinese sites where if you clicked a box that said, I'm ordering this for research purposes, they would send it to any university, no questions asked, just like an Amazon shipment.
Right.
So he gets it. I had already, I think, Venmoed him a week before, but I was like, hey, man, I'm not going to take it. Like, I watched this video. I want you to watch it. And they're like, you're being a pussy about it. And I was like, okay, good luck. And so it was very hard that month to see, like, on bench day, like, guys who I was even with, 20 pounds over me. Next week, 50 pounds in a week.
Yeah.
They're eating like shit, eating cereal and cookies, and their numbers are going up. And so there's this moment where like 2 weeks in, I'm like, man, should I take it? Is this worth it?
Yeah.
And luckily it was the third weekend. So let's say 21 days out on a Saturday, I get my first call from someone in the group who had, I think, taken whatever my bottle was. And he's like, hey man, how you dealing with the bedroom stuff? And I was like, oh, I never started taking it. And he goes, all right, I'm not trying to get you to call yourself out, but like, how are you dealing with it? It's because he thought I was lying to him.
Right.
And I was like, dude, I never took it. And basically I saw it scale probably 10 friends get ED in 1 month.
Wow.
And so there was this moment where I was like, okay, I'm glad I didn't take it. But two, no one's asking like, what is the cost of this in 30 years? Because if it's having this quick of an effect like that, what could it be in the long term? And so that was my first moment where I would say I got cautious. And then a couple years later, COVID hit and I didn't stop drinking because I had like a alcohol issue. I realized I only drank at parties. So then I enjoyed the benefits of not drinking. And it kind of started this path of like, oh, maybe if what I take optimizes me versus numbs me, this is the route. But I think that's still a hard process for people to get to. So like, what have been some points in your life where you feel like you've been supplementing to help you? And then you've maybe been supplementing in a way where it's like, is this even helping? Like, how do you balance that throughout your life? Because we all have ups and downs.
Right. Well, when you mentioned SARMs, like that whole surge, because anytime you have something that is legal or easily accessible, right, that's not necessarily a drug, but it works like a drug, you're going to have interest in a cult-like following. So let's just say that was around 2023, maybe.
That was I would say 2017 to 2020. That was the big, right before COVID.
That was when SARMs started running hard. And I have used some SARMs, just like I bought a number of different SARMs just to try them.
Yeah.
Just to see what the hype was all about. Many of them I wasn't really that impressed with. There was the one like I think GW 50156, which was like an endurance SARM. Like I did like that because it felt like you could just train and train and train forever. But prior to that SARM era, going back to say 1999 to 2004, that was the pro hormone era. So that was when I was in my bodybuilding phase, when I was still competing, okay, before I retired from competitive bodybuilding. So that was almost like, hey, these are not illegal. You can get 19 norandro, you could get androstenedione, you can get all these different things, topical andros. And you could get them at GNC at the time. And so I embarked on that. Like during the last phase of my competitive career, having trained naturally, when I started using pro hormones, which essentially were legal steroids because
Yeah.
it's just a couple of chemical, configurations off, but like the results were insane. It was almost like, dude, I can't even believe like you can buy this stuff in a store and it works this good, and so like my physique went like tremendously, improved. I mean, I always had a decent physique, but it really took it to the next level. And at that point in time, I don't think I was even concerned if you said, hey, there was liver toxicity. I'm like, dude, my liver's fine. My dad drinks all day.
You see my shoulders?
Yeah, right. That's you're not. You just when you're at that age, you just don't think about your liver. You don't think about your kidneys. You don't think about your blood glucose levels. You don't think about your pancreas. You don't think about your pituitary gland. You don't think about ED because everything's working fine. When you're 22, 23, 27, you're a machine. It isn't until 30 years old, and even from 30 to 35, you don't see much damage. But if you start when you're in your early 20s and you're running this stuff for a decade, by the time 35, 40 hits, I mean, your 40s are going to be miserable. And most people don't realize that. And that's where now it's nice to see the younger generation, so, guys like yourself are like wanting to like push the envelope, take whatever supplements they can that are safe, legal, natural to improve their performance, improve their physique, improve their brain performance. But being like, hey, you know what? I don't want to affect my performance in the bedroom. What good is having this great body if I can't perform? And then also having those concerns for your health.
Yeah, because it's a hard thing to do, right? Because the social norm is you go drink on Friday and Saturday, you suffer Saturday morning, Sunday morning, Monday morning you don't do shit. Tuesday, okay, maybe you go out Tuesday night, and it kind of I saw this in college. It was this cycle where I'm like, when does anyone get anything done? Like, there's literally no time, and there was always that weird Wednesday to Thursday window where you didn't have a hangover, but you were kind of prepping to drink.
Right.
And I remember there was one time, so Facebook had come into town. So this was like a year before I dropped out of college. And it was because some girl from Cleveland worked at Meta's headquarters. And so I saw all of these answers of like how people use social media to grow their business, like all these testimonials from like tiny businesses all the way up to enterprises. And then I went back that weekend and I was like, I need to figure out this Facebook ad thing. So I start playing with it. And then I didn't go out one weekend, just like stayed in, didn't tell anyone I wasn't coming out either. And Sunday morning, everyone was like, dude, I love seeing you last night. I had a great time. And there was this weird trick in my head where I was like, even if I don't go, they still think I was there. So it was kind of this window to start the optimization route. And I remember one of the first things in my mastermind people talked about was the more nootropic side of things. And I think in Ohio, you know a lot of kids that grow up on Ritalin or Adderall, and that's what you think brain enhancers are, maybe coffee, like caffeine. And it was very interesting that in this mastermind, they're like, have you ever taken mushrooms? And I was like, I tried psychedelics in high school, it didn't really go well. And they're like, no. Like, have you done this to like let your brain heal and recover? Which was a whole new concept that was somehow productive. But I took the regimen. I think I did 8 months of just microdosing only, but that also included I had to journal for at least an hour. So I'd be filling 5 to 10 pages of just, I'm nervous to call this person. I hope we get a dog. And this little stuff like that.
Right.
But then it started to make me realize that my caffeine consumption lowered unintentionally. I went from, let's say, sleeping 4 hours a night to like 8-hour nights were getting pretty common. And then I also noticed, like, I used to have rampant panic attacks, like talking every other month, like one where I'm just a lunatic, everything's breaking. And it could have been because a file took too long to upload. And even that stopped as well. So that, I think, started our generation on this path of, if we're going to spend this money, instead of the alcohol on the weekend, what is like a better return I can get from my experience? And I think that's why, like, our generation, for example, goes towards the gummy as opposed to the shots.
Right.
And I think there's this shift happening where people are nurturing the long term, because these guys like Brian Johnson, for example, I mean, they're talking about living forever. And like, we're actually at a point in human history where it seems like there is a push of like, not only am I going to live better, but like, we're going to start pushing some records of how long do these humans stay on the planet.
Right.
Is it wild for you to see that we're kind of in this moment of all of it?
It is. And I almost wish this happened 10 years sooner, because then I would be like a little bit more, I'd be more doing it more for the, say, chasing, I want to see how long I can live, versus at this juncture, I'm still thinking I got to reverse the last 10 years of damage, because from, let's say, 40 to 50, I was still pushing my body harder than I should have, just doing dumb things, marathon ocean swims, running the New York Marathon, like lifting heavy, like all the stuff I should have been like, listen, like stop doing that, which 10 years later I did. But like it does blow my mind that now we're looking at being able to have an understanding through stem cells, through understanding how to reverse, the aging of our endocrine system and of our organs, because essentially that's what causes us to age. And even primarily, probably the biggest cause of aging is, diabetes or, type 2 diabetes, because our pancreas, which produces insulin, which regulates blood sugar, once your pancreatic function goes off, blood sugar levels rise, insulin levels rise, health begins to decline. So the fact that we're now having a better understanding how to, reverse pancreatic beta cell degeneration, to bring your pancreatic beta cells back to life so that you have youthful insulin production, high insulin sensitivity, so your body's able to absorb foods more efficiently. Also taking into consideration that most people are now shifting to eating healthier natural foods, where for 30 years since the inception of the food pyramid, we've been destroying ourselves. In the late 80s, it was like, hey, forget 3 squares a day. Protein's bad, fats are bad. Eat 16 to 20 servings of enriched wheat flour products per day to load your body up on carbs, and then have a very small amount of fat, very small amount of protein. 30 years later, 3 decades, we now have the highest incidence of diabetes, heart disease,
Celiacs.
atherosclerosis, celiacs, erectile dysfunction, ADD. We're a complete disaster. So I look at, yes, living longer is great, but if you're dealing with all these conditions and disorders, you're not going to want to live long.
Because you're suffering.
Because you're suffering. If you're in a state of suffering, whether it's suffering from physical deterioration, whether it's self-induced or because you listen to the propaganda of the media of what you were supposed to do, or you've abused drugs or you've abused your body, your first survival at that point is, I got to reverse damage. Once that damage is reversed, then you could focus on these longevity protocols. Now, somebody such as yourself or somebody in their early 20s or maybe 30, they haven't really done enough damage unless they were going balls to the wall, like destroying themselves,
Yeah.
partying and doing all kind of crazy stuff. Like that generation can look and be like, man, I'm still feeling great. I want to live forever. But what I find now, if I talk to somebody who's 60 or 70 and I tell them, guess what? The technology is here that you could live to be 140. You know what they say? I don't want to live that long. I'd rather live to be 80 years old, 85 and be done, because you're thinking of continuing a life that's not healthy, that's not fun, that's not vibrant.
So in your life, recently, what was a moment that made you slow down? Like what caused that hiatus to pause?
I would say prior to the neck injury, I had a really serious back injury from just, it was kind of like a spinal spasm that when I was out on a run, running up and down a bridge in South Florida, doing like a 16-mile run on a Sunday at 1 p.m. in October, 90 degrees, 90% humidity, just to go out and run during the hottest part of the day because I wanted to challenge myself
I feel
by
it.
running in the hottest part of the day. It's just, and then I ended up coming down the bridge, had like a back spasm from,
Hitting
hitting
it.
the pavement, and like literally was like on the ground, like almost in rigor mortis. And that was where I'm laying there. I'm thinking, what am I doing this for? And then that's when I ended up laying there for a while, walked back home, like 4 or 5 miles. And then at that day is when I picked up ocean swimming. I'm like, you know what? I still like to go long because there's something that happens when you do endurance sports that you do not get from going into the gym, doing a high intensity workout. It's that long, repetitive, over and over, whether it's running, cycling, or swimming, that just does something to the nervous system and the brain. So I was able to kind of convert my love and passion for running to more of a non-impact activity going into ocean swimming. So that was like in around 2015 that happened. And since then, I haven't really done much long distance running.
And so how long was the neck injury after that then?
Neck injury wasn't for like maybe another 8-9 years later.
Yeah. So for people who look at you, like it might look like everything physically has been good. Like talk to people a little bit about what that was like. Because I think a lot of people get these injuries and instinct one is hide it. That's what I did. I hurt my lower back horrendously squatting. And the same night I go out and drink. fall on ice, and then I'm actually out for 3 to 4 days. And I don't think I talked about it for like a year or two until I kind of fixed it. But like for you, what
Right.
was it like getting injured?
It's very humbling, and it really just puts things in perspective, and it really makes you, like, for me, because I'm an exercise addict. So like I have to exercise. If I don't exercise, like I was never a big drinker. I'll need a drink to calm down at the end of the day. If I don't get a workout in, I have to have one or two drinks just to chill
Because even
out.
when the injury occurs, the battery is still.
Yeah, you're still, even when the injury occurs, your brain still needs the stimulation. You still need the endorphins. You still need the muscle stimulation. You still need the heart lung stimulus. You still need to be breathing. You still need to be oxygenating the body. So, for those that, and many do have exercise addiction, they just don't realize it, right?
Yeah.
But, and even like for those that, let's say, suffer from chronic anxiety, doctors will say, well, you're getting enough exercise, you're getting enough cardio, because when you're breathing, inhaling, exhaling, expanding the lungs, heart's beating, you're getting blood circulating throughout the body, it has a relaxing effect. If you do not get exercise and you wake up and you go and you have a cup of coffee or 2 cups of coffee or 3 cups of coffee, then 2 energy drinks, and you're sitting on your phone and computer like most people do, or you wake up, you go to an office and you're sitting all day and you're sitting and you're sitting, and then maybe you smoke, maybe you do some nicotine, maybe you're vaping nicotine. I mean, we're all caffeine and nicotine these days, most
Yep.
people. And then at the end of the day, you then go and have a drink. You don't have any exercise. I mean, you just do not feel right. So you have to have that release. And that's where people, if they don't exercise, they're having to get into a jacuzzi or a hot tub to just soak that nervous tension out of them, because the caffeine and the nicotine does accelerate central nervous system function, does increase blood pressure, does increase heart rate, but you're not getting that physiological benefit of exercise. So
It's almost like a trick on the body.
it completely is.
Yeah, I mean, one that I remember, I think my uncle Barry talked to me about it because he was probably the only one in our family that had a lot of success in business. But, we've talked about it was not the right way. It was the drinking late at night. And one of the things that he did his genetic test before I did. And he said, in our family, I forget what the gene is that gets turned on, but basically it's a very common habit to overindulge in carbohydrates right before bed because it actually lowers everything the same way that like feeling calm and being mentally healthy would. And so, one of the things that I cut off after I went to that event with Ty Lopez out in Beverly Hills is I was like, everyone here is optimizing to live till they're 150. I went to a place like Soul Space and I knew that I was like, I feel like if there's one marginal change, if I just don't eat like a fat ass at 11 p.m., everything else will make it so much easier. And
Right.
what actually got me to stop was going to the sauna and tasting how sweet my lips were when I sweat from the night before. It was the most disgusting. I was like, I'm never feeling that
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
But I guess for you, like you've been healthy your whole life. When this neck injury occurred, like how do you even manage like everything you said, right? Your battery is still going.
Yep.
You were used to 16-mile runs on a Sunday to do a light workout. So like how was it easy in the beginning or was it actually way hard?
At first, it was really difficult because I'm still thinking old school, like a lot of people do, and you're still thinking the old ways you did things, running, pounding the pavement, or if you're going into the gym, lifting weights, pumping iron. Just like I see guys every day, man, my shoulder hurts, man, it's aching. Then they're in there benching again. They don't give their shoulder a chance to heal because you don't know. It's like if you're trying to pound a nail in a board and you're used to using a hammer, and like, okay, can you use a screwdriver? Can you use a wrench? Can you use, a flat piece of metal? Like anything just to get that nail in the hammer. You don't always have to use the hammer to get the nail in
Yeah.
the board. So for me, I had to really gravitate to very high intensity stretching, high intensity contractions, almost like what I would call like a hardcore yoga. And so by doing that and sort of teaching myself the way to kind of really harness my core strength and getting everything tight with, of course, the use of,
Yeah.
the forearm trainer, it just really showed me that I could get my rocks off and get that fix that I need from exercise without having to go and pound my body against the pavement, without having to go into the gym and pump iron where I'm damaging my joints, damaging my spine, damaging my back, because none of this is like, a really healthy thing to do. And that's where like I've always seen these like people say, oh, yoga is the best for longevity. And you see these yogis that have these ripped physiques. Now they're not big,
Yeah.
right? But if you don't need big muscles and you just want lean tone muscles, you're fine. But yogis really have the ability to just harness that core strength and keep tension throughout the body. So that's where I kind of was like, what can I do and what type of training can I do to develop that level of muscle control? And then in doing so, it's now I've kind of developed a whole new way to train, and it's allowing me to like stay in shape, feeling good, allowing myself to feel like I'm getting a good workout, because after I do that core tension activation sequence, then I can go and do some, moderate intensity cardio, fairly low
Yeah.
impact, just to get sweat going and work the heart and lungs. So now it's really more about nervous system stimulation and activation, harnessing the power of the core, putting tension on the muscles, and then oxygenating the body.
So I think a big part of this though is like you came into that injury with a lot of knowledge, not knowing you'd be injured, but with your background, I think a lot of people feel like the system is what gets them. And, I think I've had it before, like I broke my arm and I just remember first thing they said, oh, do you need like 3 months of painkillers? And then it's kind of this whole system where I feel like it's designed to almost make you a customer of it. Like, did you experience that? And if you did, how did you make sure that that wasn't the route that you took?
As far as which system?
So like the medical system, right? So you hurt your neck, you have this severe
Right.
injury. Like I'm sure the doctor's telling you one thing, but you're kind of going another
Oh
route.
yeah, no, the doctors and the physical therapists, and physical therapists, in my opinion, are great for like sedentary people. Guy that's working, driving a lift truck, has too many drinks on his lunch hour, falls off the lift truck, hurts his arm. He could really benefit from a physical therapist. Somebody who's a high level athlete or a high performing fitness individual, and I'm going and being trained by a physical therapist that, with no disrespect, really isn't qualified to train me
Yeah.
and doesn't have the knowledge or the background or the understanding. It was just really a waste of my time. So that's where I kind of had to figure out, my own way of doing it.
Yeah. And I guess how did you deal with the, let's call it like physical recovery side of it, right? Because like I think one of the things we've talked about off camera is like a lot of business owners suffer from this and a lot of blue collar workers, especially in the Midwest, suffer from this. They're given these painkillers from the doctor, and then that may over infatuate another bad habit like the nicotine, like the drinking, or
Yeah.
whatever that may be. Like, how was it for you from a guy who's always healthy to then see all the devil temptations kind of like sitting right over your shoulder?
Sure. Well, initially when the injury was so bad, there was no way I could even train around it. Usually you'll train around an injury, right? Like even having like with my background, I was a runner and a bodybuilder. So like when I had a running injury from my leg, if I had knee hurt, I'd go back to pumping
Yeah.
iron. If I hurt my shoulder, I'd go back to running. So I was always able to go back and forth. But with this, when you're dealing with the neck and spine, you're pretty much immobilized. And so when I was going through that frustrating period, where I'm like, man, I can't figure this out on my own, and I have no patience. And I'm like, what can I do to get better? What can I do to get better? It's like, and if when I would ever have an injury, and I know a lot of people are like this, you become so fixated and obsessed on that injury, it becomes just, how do I heal it? What do I do? And your whole life revolves around, I can't get back to normal until this injury is fixed, right? And then what happens? We're usually for after a week or two, I could normally fix myself, right? With
Yeah.
this neck thing, it was like months. So I finally was like, all right, you know what? Let me just listen to the doctors. And I began taking their prescription medication, gabapentin, all these different, anticonvulsants, nerve drugs, all these different things, just because I wasn't able to work the pain out. Normally, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, exercise is a way to make yourself feel good. You get the endorphin release. And so with this particular injury, I wasn't able to do that. So I literally almost gave up in saying, like, you know what? Doctors say that I need to be on these drugs. I'll just take these drugs. And then the one thing I learned from that was this is how people get hooked on drugs, because before, when I didn't feel good, I would get my high from exercise, where now I could just take a pill. And
And
that,
and it kind of tricks the brain, right? Because
to,
you probably in your head you're like, I'm doing what the doctor says, I'm being responsible. But like Joe knows, like, hey man, like if me 5 years ago saw this, I'd be screaming at you right now.
oh, yeah.
So like, how was that journey? Because I think that's where a lot of people, like, truthfully, when I talk to you, I think that's where they will find the inspiration, right? Like the lifting, doing all this for years, like it's admirable. But I think like being knocked down to a level that most Americans hit and suffer silently from, like, how
Sure.
did you actually get through that?
It was honestly, it's Holy Week right now. It was it was initially, it was a lot of frustration, but then it was really just keeping faith in God, even when you didn't realize that you had the faith. Because, like, when you're frustrated, like, you think that you're totally alone, you think it's over. Like, because, when you're really dealing with a serious injury, you're at a point where you're thinking, like, man, my life is over. Like, what am I going to do to come back from this? And so I think a lot of it just was just patience and just really just thinking, how can I rethink and how do I have to learn a new way of doing things? And probably the hardest thing was coming off all the medication, and then dealing with the physical pain, the physical nerve pain that runs through your whole body, where you just feel uncomfortable all day. Like you're in pain all day. Like when Ronnie Coleman says he takes 16 Vicodin a day to deal with the pain. Otherwise, like he is in pain and his pain level's like a 10 out of 10. Now, obviously, I'm probably not in that level of pain because
Yeah.
that dude just destroyed himself. But the whole fact of the matter is, when you are in that level of pain, and if you can't escape the pain, for many people, exercise was a way of escaping pain.
Yeah.
Physical pain, emotional pain. Okay. That's why a lot of people that are like runners and bodybuilders, they're the most messed up people mentally, because to want to go and pound yourself against the pavement for hours, and to want to go and mutilate yourself in the gym and just destroy your body to get that response. Like, not everybody, but there's something wrong with most bodybuilders and endurance athletes. That's why if they don't get into bodybuilding and endurance sports,
It's going to be
they're
something. Yeah.
alcohol or drugs. So there's an intrinsic link between, endurance and bodybuilding and drug addiction, because that's why when everybody rips on somebody for going to the gym, I hate when I hear that. Like, oh, this guy's obsessed. He's always going to work. Well, okay, if he's not doing that, what's he going to be doing? Going to the bar?
Yeah.
Let the guy go to the gym. What's the big deal? You know what I mean?
So when you think about like a lot of people who maybe they're suffering with this right now, maybe not as severe of an injury, but they feel like they're in that trap, like what was it a moment of faith that you felt like it started to kind of get better? Or like what was a defining moment in that suffering where you actually felt like you were on the mend?
I felt when I was finally able to get back control of my nervous system, and I was able to figure out a way to alleviate the pain without the use of the prescription medication that the doctors had me on. And that was only done through high tension work, which started at the forearm and then worked my way back up. So, like, for instance, that burning sensation you get when you're training abs, or if you're doing, any type of a movement for, 10, 15 minutes, it starts to get that burn, achy, dull pain, which then starts to activate the body's systems to produce endorphins, which are your body's natural morphine. So I almost had to activate my body's natural endorphin process, endo meaning within the body, morphine being, a painkiller, to be able to come off the prescription drugs. And if I not learned a new way to train, I would not have been able to get the endorphin response from my old way of doing it, just going out for a 3 to 5 mile run, going into the gym and banging out a workout. Okay, cool. So that was where it was really hard to have to learn this new sort of tension protocol, which I've coined the Joe Pavlik 5C workout, or the 5C principles, which is what I feel to be the ultimate workout for somebody that's already past the point of like, don't want to go and pound the pavement anymore. Don't want to go to the gym and be trying to bench with these kids. I just want to feel good. I want to be in shape. I want to be flexible. I want to be pain free. And I want to feel energized after I do my workout, rather than feeling like, man, I need to go home and sleep because I crushed it at the gym.
Yeah.
And so that's like where the 5C principle is that.
Yeah, and I will say like it has been super fun to play with the forearm blaster like every day. Like, didn't train forearms as well as I should have. That was always a weak point for me.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point now where I think I'm every other day using it, and I've noticed not only forearm growth, which has been fun, but a strength in everything else. Like I heard you say that the first time we talked about it. I would say with any sort of raising motion, I feel it a lot. And push down motion, I feel it a lot. And especially with curls, I know it sounds weird, but I've said better mind muscle connection with biceps because I actually think there's like a separate
For sure.
action. And yeah, I also got it to work on the feet.
Oh yeah, that was pretty crazy.
My calf, so I suffer from SCD, like we talked about, small calf disorder. And I did it like this. So I put it on my foot, and I think I probably took 3 hours of Zoom calls, 20 here, and I would just switch it, 20 there. And then I was putting it on the ground to hit whatever this muscle is. So
Yeah.
I did this for like 3 hours, and you don't think about it, right? Because I didn't pound the pavement. I didn't take pre-workout and then have this whole up-down cycle.
Right.
And the next day I woke up forgetting I did that and like actually fell over, like right
your
on
calves
it.
were
And I was
sore.
like, holy shit. And I
Oh,
think my walk with Chewy was supposed to be 4 miles. I think I did a mile and just kept throwing him for fat because
wow.
it hit it in a way that I've never done it before, right? Like when I
Right,
go to the
right.
gym, it's 200 pounds, do the higher reps, and I would always end real slow, real light, which is good. But this was a different way to use it where it almost felt like a hand versus just a
Right.
lever up and down.
Right. But that's awesome because it shows that you don't need a lot of weight. You need prolonged tension
Yeah.
to activate different muscles, And truthfully, now that you mention it, like there's no reason that we both should not have the FlexMaster forearm
now.
trainer. Like if this wasn't like an actual podcast being recorded and we were just sitting here just bullshitting and jamming out, I'd have one here. I mean, I don't know. I should have.
So I keep it in the car. Truthfully,
Yeah.
what I'll do a lot is if let's say I'm driving with this hand, I go both ways. So I'll go up and down. But I also remember hearing about this. So there's a business guy, Hermosi, who I've sent you some content from. And he made all of his money in the fitness space. They did fitness software. They would go to gyms and book them. And I remember he explained his workout regimen once where if he would work a 10-hour day, he would have these little 15-minute gaps where he would just do like skull crushers.
Okay.
And then an hour later, he's doing side raises. But it's these little 15-minute bursts. And we're like,
sure,
this is nuts. But he was huge. He was jacked. And it's the same principle where
yep,
it's a lot of tension spread out versus like 45 minutes of my heart might pop.
Right. And it's funny you mention that because, just like we think that we've been taught in the bodybuilding world or the fitness world, you need to eat 6 meals a day. A lot of people think they need 6, breakfast, lunch, and dinner and 3 meals, or, if you want to eat to gain mass, right? Or we've thought that, okay, if you want to go into the gym, it's either a 60-minute workout.
Yeah.
Or if you're going the Mike Mentzer, old school, heavy duty style Dorian Yates workout, it's a 30-minute, crush it, pick a muscle group, destroy it.
Yeah, but if you don't see God during that workout, it doesn't count.
Right. Exactly. So it's like you got to go completely balls to the wall.
Kill your nervous system.
No pain, no gain. But what you're talking about is, this spreading out your workout over the course of the day strategically, the same way someone in prison would go in there and do push-ups all day, isometric pulls on the bars. Maybe they go into the yard for like an hour where they'll do their curls and bench, but the rest of the time they're taking all that nervous energy, all that elevated testosterone, and just keeping low-grade tension, low-grade stimulation, continual blood flow into the muscle with a poor diet. So this also really shows that there's something to be said for those people that can't get to the gym or just hate dedicating that hour where like, I can't do it. It sometimes is a lot easier if you're at work and anything you could do on the clock. Like, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur. So like anytime I could beat the system or milk the clock and I could work out while I was getting paid by somebody else, I was always about like, I do 50 push-ups every hour on the hour. I'm like, oh, I'm getting paid. I worked an 8-hour shift. I got 400 push-ups in. I got paid to do my workout. You know what I mean? So,
and it kind of, and I think that's a shift that I think, for anyone watching this that doesn't know, Joe, it's very fun to kind of see like a lot of the stuff you've implemented. Cause like, even the day when we're filming that stretching routine, I'm expecting some cookie cutter shit. And like, I literally, couldn't even believe how flexible you were. I was like, trying not to laugh. I was like, holy shit, like this looks like one of those movies like when you went like this with your legs and you're like, oh, my rear delts, and I was like, man, I need to get my stretching up. It's been very interesting to see what I would call a new approach, and I think a lot of people who feel stuck that, I mean, we've talked about a few people off camera that we both know that it's not a huge injury, but these little injuries actually affect every area of people's life.
Massive.
And so I guess for you, like, how has it been? I know we're just starting, but what do you look forward to when it comes to just talking about a lot of this stuff? Like when you look at the internet right now, and I know we've talked about consuming some content, like where do you feel a lot of people just have no education right now?
Sure. Well, to take it just one step back from that, what you said, and I'm glad you brought that up because, it really, like for me, my passion of just being creative and being unique and innovative and helping others with their fitness and health and wellness goals is really what drives me, regardless of financial gain. I mean, there's people that I help that can't afford help, and there's companies that I'll overcharge because they can afford to pay it. So it's like everything is adjusted differently. But as far as, when you're talking about really what I'm seeing out there is there's a lot of the same. There's a lot of younger people, and even not, and I'm not bitching about the younger generation. My dad used to say I didn't like young people when I was a young person. So that was his excuse for being a crabby person. I mean, I love young people, I love old people, I love all people. But when you have, let's say, maybe a newbie or somebody coming into it that just gets in shape for the first time, and they're doing incline dumbbell press at the gym, and they are so impressed that they're doing incline dumbbell press, they're thinking, man, you know what? I'm going to go on Instagram and I'm going to put my workout of doing incline dumbbell press. And I'm just thinking, has anybody not realized that like this really isn't that different? This really isn't that innovative. Like maybe it's a good boost for your ego
Yeah.
because you want to show people, look at my body as I'm doing incline dumbbell press, and maybe you're doing it to impress your friends so your mom can see, so your girlfriend can see, whatever.
It's more intrinsic than extrinsic.
Much more intrinsic than extrinsic. But so when I'm looking at social media, and this is where you have been very helpful, tremendously helpful, and will be even more so going forward, is because I see so many things that need to be discussed and need to be addressed, and so many problems that are not being addressed that people are dealing with daily. And it's not about finding a better way to do an incline dumbbell press.
I mean, like the one that I think we had happen almost by accident, but when we were talking about metaboderm, I remember, we were just kind of going through like, we don't want to be controversial. And then sadly, like something horrible happened, like there was a competitor who
Right.
basically cut the wrong way.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people don't want to admit that in the world of supplements, a lot of people go, oh, is this worth it? Is it not worth it? But they're not asking the deeper question, which is if you go the risky route, like what are we actually risking? And sadly, in this case, it was a life.
Right. Right. No, and that's where, sometimes lack of information, lack of education, people don't realize that, I mean, supplements can be very powerful. And with certain protocols that are not understood by the user, it can lead to fatal situations. Now, of course, I'm not saying that supplements are bad. I'm just saying use of supplements, use of extreme protocols without proper knowledge, that's where people get themselves into trouble.
Yeah. And so, I think we're going to do a lot more of these episodes, but I want to give people a chance. So to wrap this up, like, let's say they watch this, they acknowledge, yeah, I need the help. I hear this guy and I think I'm stuck right now. Like, what would be your first piece of advice? If they were to watch your content, like, do they need to educate themselves on supplements? Should it be their lifestyle first? Or is there a holistic way to approach this where it doesn't feel overwhelming?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think supplements are really the last thing, even though it's the business that I'm in. But like if I'm talking about teaching somebody to go the distance in life, which is sort of my marathon muscle method, my marathon muscle principle, it's not about running a marathon. It's not about building a muscle. It's about building a body to go the distance in life with strength, endurance, and flexibility that is sustainable. Okay. So I would probably say the big thing most people would need to realize is that you have to really look at your warm up and your cool down. Most people totally disregard the warm up and cool down. They want to get in the gym, they want to bang the workout. The minute they're done with the workout, 5 minutes later, they're in their car, they're slugging down a protein drink, they're eating a protein bar, they're going to do something else. And like that whole pre and post workout phase is as important for preparation to make sure that all bodily systems are ready for the workout. And then also after the workout, it isn't just slamming down a protein drink and I got my recovery down. Because what people don't understand is depending on the type of workout you're doing, if you're training for say 60 to 90 minutes high intensity and you deplete all muscle glycogen and liver glycogen and you think, oh, I'm going to go and jam this 40 grams of whey protein right after a training session, chances are most of that protein is going to get converted to glucose through gluconeogenesis because the body's first survival mechanism is to replenish glycogen, not protein synthesis. So this is like the things where like people have to really understand, and a lot of what I need to explain can't be done in 3 bullet points in 10 seconds. So like I am understanding right now as I'm watching Instagram, I'm watching TikTok, I really feel that, and I'm confident in my knowledge and what I'm ready to share with the world, that this will be life-changing for many people because many of these philosophies and theories are things that I've invented based on intuition, which then now has been validated by science as we've gotten into more studies of this. But people have to realize that I'm not going to be able to explain this in 10 seconds. I mean, it's literally going to be like a school.
Yeah.
It's going to be an institution, and it's going to be, if you believe in me and you believe in my philosophies and you can kind of identify and be like, hey, you know what? That's me. I just want to feel good, want to be in shape, want to be healthier, want to go the distance, want to learn to do the proper workout so I don't have to every year, every season keep refiguring it out and just have something that's sustainable. That's what I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying to create the sustainable, achievable program for the masses.
And how old are you going to live till?
I'll tell you at this point, based on the damage that I probably have done and the technology that's out there, I would think if I could make it to 100, that would be pretty impressive.
Now, if you think the best stem cell scientists, the best, let's call it neurogenesis, physical recovery,
Yeah.
if AI goes at this pace and funding goes in the right direction, does that change your answer? Do you feel more optimistic?
I will tell you this, and I'm planning on having some serious stem cell stuff done this year, just because I'm at a point, I've done everything I can naturally through diet, nutrition, resting, and all that. And I've heard a lot about stem cells out of the country. I'm planning to take a trip out of the country to get stem cells done, where it basically helps to rejuvenate the neck and rejuvenate the entire body. If I can get my body back, and I would right now say I maybe feel about 40.
Okay.
I maybe feel 10 years younger than I am. But if I could get and reverse the damage, let's say in the next 2 to 3 years, so that by the age of 53 or 54, I can say, man, you know what? I'm feeling really good. Then I would say, you know what? I want to embark on this mission to try to live to be 100, 120.
Yeah.
I honestly can't say when somebody says we can live to be 140 years old, I just personally, I'm not saying I don't believe it. I just can't comprehend it because it's something that we haven't fathomed, right?
Yeah.
Just like saying, we're going to run a marathon right now. The world record's like right under 2 hours. If somebody's like, oh, you're going to see a day when we're going to be able to override all lactate threshold systems in the body and get hematocrit up to the highest level without risking any.
Well, let me ask you this. When we played with the chemistry formulas with ChatGPT, did that change your perception on how much can be done quickly with very, let's call it high level chemistry?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What was that like for you to see? Because I have no chemistry background. I don't understand any of it. And in a 15-minute period, we basically did how much work?
Right. No, I mean, put it this way. If medical technology and regenerative medicine is 50%, 20% of what AI is, crazy. Because remember, we have been living in a technical dark age. We've been living in the Stone Age as it relates to regenerative medicine and anti-aging. Why? Because until a few years ago, Big Brother and the government wanted to keep us sick. They wanted to keep us fat. They wanted to keep us loaded on carbs, loaded on medication. And they didn't want people questioning anything. They didn't want people, they wanted a sick population. A sick population fuels a good economy in the United States. And that's why it's great to see what's happening now with, RFK and, these movements towards educating people, getting rid of these toxic chemicals and things of that nature. So,
and seeing how much of it's being validated by the AI, like seeing these,
yes.
I don't know if you've seen the cancer studies where the computer is detecting it like not even a 2x margin, like almost a 100-time better margin than any doctor. And they just did another test where they had, I believe, a doctor group test 100 patients that had some form of lung disease, and then just an audio transcript of a recording of their lungs. And the AI got, I think, like 97 correct, and the human doctors got 38 correct.
Crazy.
So, yeah, we're in a crazy time, but I appreciate you coming on tonight.
Oh, no. Always a pleasure. Always love digging into these topics and look forward to discussing many more.
Hey, I was just scratching the surface.
All right.
Solid.